Inflation is the Grinch this Christmas, and related celebrations as well as seasonal shopping this year require strategic planning from all parties involved. So why is Korea noting a divide between those seeking to splurge and those seeking to save? Are the short hours of Christmas lights affecting the festive cheer? And what can be done to ease the holiday waste during the seasonal celebration? Welcome to Issues and Insiders. Shopping for groceries and now for gifts has been rendered an overwhelming task amid high inflation and the prolonged pandemic. For more on spending trends to mark the end of this year and to usher in the new one, I have Jack Barton here in the studio. Jack, it's good to have you back.
Great to be here.
I also have Nicolas Rocca here in the studio with us. Nicolas, welcome back.
Great to be here.
Jack, let's start here on the local front. Now, pundits say that there's been a significant divide with regard to seasonal spending here in the country between those seeking to splurge and those seeking to save. What more can you tell us?
There's a big divide, and it's a big change as well in the way people are spending and what they're spending their money on. So we are seeing the big ticket, the luxury brand items still being snapped up by those who can afford it. But because of inflation and the double effect of inflation, you know, prices are going up, but also people with home repayments are paying more on their mortgages, so there's less money to spend on goods that now cost more. So what we're seeing is retailers really pushing lower cost presents this year. And from what we're hearing, people are spending about half of what they normally spend on gifts. I was down a big retailer yesterday and I saw a number of gift areas where normally they would be in about the 100,000 won range, and they were down around the 50,000 won range or even lower, and really pushing that. But the big change has been in, of course, going out, which is what a lot of Koreans do. They dine out. It's a bit different from Europe or Australia. There's more of a dating thing. It's more of an eating out, and restaurants say there are no bookings. It's a disaster. People aren't going out. They're planning to stay home this year. So meal kit sales up in the big retailers, but also decorations, Christmas decorations up about 25%, and social media saying searches for home party and home party food also up around 30%. So a big shift in the way people are spending Christmas this year here in Korea.
Right, and with regard to their spending, Nicolas, in an attempt to better perhaps cater to demands for strategic spending, convenience stores, I understand, are coming up with cost-efficient presents, especially for the new Lunar New Year as well. Could you tell us a bit more about this, and how does this compare to practices over in France?
So yeah, there's been different initiatives from big marts. There's CU that said they were going to offer 40% more gifts under 100,000 won. Other retailers or big marts that said they would give sales or promotion if you booked the gifts in advance, for instance, in order to try to push the consumptions of gift, even though people cannot afford it as much. The comparison with Europe is a bit different because inflation has been a bit lower here than it is in Europe for various reasons. In the UK, I think it was around 11%. Hungary, way more, around 20%, and there's a different situation in Europe. So, of course, if you have such a high inflation, it's hard to imagine that you're gonna, put the priority on buying gifts. If I talk about France, for instance, various studies show that this year, even though inflation is just around 7%, this year, the price is the main factor when you're going to pick a gift for people. And there's been a lot of stories, even this week on French TVs, for instance, showing parents that were very saddened because they realized that on some specific goods that they wanted to offer their kids, the inflation rates were above 40% for Legos or Xbox or PlayStation or different goods. So I think, yeah, price is the most important factor this year when it comes to gifts.
Right. And Jack, in light of energy expenses, energy prices, and of course shortages, Christmas lights are looking to be on for shorter hours this year. Do you see this reality as perhaps affecting the festive cheer? Or do you suppose it would serve to perhaps rally support for these woes against, well, in light of the war and worries over the economy?
Yeah, we're seeing big cutbacks, particularly in Europe, where a lot of the energy is coming from the gas from Russia, had been coming from the gas from Russia. So we see big public areas where there would normally be a lot of lighting, there's not. But even in countries that aren't directly affected, even here in Korea, we're seeing the government cut back on a lot of lighting in public areas, a real big push into LED to make sure everything is low power, less time spent with the lights on. some big chains reducing their big display areas and cutting back. I don't see it killing the overall mood or affecting it too much though, because I spoke before about 25% home decoration sales going up. Actually, when it comes to Christmas lighting, that's 36%. So a massive jump in the way people are lighting their own homes. And people are, particularly here in Korea, but I suspect this is right around the globe, making a big effort as they're downsizing a bit and coming home, making the home environment more of a Christmas spirit. So focusing more on the home than going out, which is really what Christmas is all about anyway. And even before I saw that, I realized my wife and I have done the same thing here, and we've put all the lights up outside over the gates and, you know, done a big thing, but they're all solar lights as well. So, you know, they're lights we can use every year from here on in without having to worry about those big energy bills. So no, I don't think it's going to overly affect the Christmas atmosphere. Everybody understands why these measures have to be taken, and with the move to come back home and make a warmer, brighter family Christmas, perhaps that might even bring a little more cheer.
Right, hopefully. And staying with lights, Nicolas, I understand France has been on the bandwagon for some time now, especially with the Eiffel Tower, right?
Yes, exactly. I mean, we have been facing in France a complex situation because we're usually a nuclear-powered country. So we were supposed allegedly to be less affected than other European countries by the problem of electricity, but because of various reasons, we were not able to make the nuclear power plants work as well as we should. So we, in France, it's been a few months now that there's been policies trying to push the population to use less electricity. So if you're asking the population to use less electricity and to be more sensitive about your consumption, you have to give symbols to people. So the Eiffel Tower has been one of them. It's been, now I think it's 1 or 2 hours less every day. So it's mostly a disappointment for tourists, I think. Same with the Champs-Élysées that has historically having a lot of lights. For Christmas this year, it's going to be a week less. As Jack mentioned, it was also they're going to use LED lamps to have lower consumptions. And overall, it seemed to have worked. I mean, people have been using less electricity. For the Champs-Élysées, I think it's around 40% less electricity consumptions than the year before. And in France, even though there's been a lot of polemics and everybody was kind of frightened to have some power cuts, it has been avoided. So, I mean, I think it's a positive outcome in the end, and it doesn't seem to affect that much the cheering of people.
Right, good to know, good to know. Jack, back here on the local front, end-of-year celebrations are also said to be marked by a broader sense, perhaps, of crowd safety. Is this something that you've been witnessing as well?
Absolutely. Following the Halloween tragedy, we're seeing a massive crowd control effort. I was at the Christmas market in Gwangwon a couple of days ago in the evening. And even there, it's not a big market. There's not that many people, but a lot of crowd control. And we had to move clockwise through the market and, you know, where you went in and where you came out. And we know in Myeongdong, the big shopping area on Christmas Eve, all of the traders will have to close down. It's more than 360 traders will have to close shops, the street traders, for the safety measures. And again, they've already got big crowd control measures in there. And then for New Year's Eve coming up, in many places, for the sunrise celebrations have been cancelled. Of course, you can still go, but the official events in Gangneung and a couple of other places, they are still having them, but with huge security efforts. They're saying they've got their security perfect. And of course, in many cases, it is unnecessary. You know, this isn't the events of Halloween, but it is also a little understandable. The nation is still in shock. We know that more could have been done, and that was a case where, you know, sort of doing a lot more would have been better than doing less. And so there is this massive overreaction at the moment, but I think everybody understands it because of that. But some things, I think perhaps like shutting all the businesses down in Myeongdong, with the economic problems that already exist, are perhaps going a little bit too far.
Right, I see. Moving forward, Nicolas, another focus amid the end-of-year celebrations this time around is the call for less holiday waste. That being said, what do you perhaps suggest to better address this issue of holiday waste?
So there's been a couple of, it's been a couple of years now that there's talks in Europe generally to have greener Christmas, greener end of the year celebration. One of the big issue is the Christmas tree, of course. It's the symbol, but then every time of the year in January, the streets are full of, you know, trees that are supposed to live for 7 or 10 years, but that you just use for a couple of weeks. So it's a complex situation because actually you might think that it's easier to buy just a plastic tree or you know, a tree that you could use every year, but because it comes from far away usually, because it's made of non-recyclable products, actually you need to use your tree 20 years for it to be more like greener in a way than a natural tree that was grown from not far away. So I mean, there's been a lot of talks about this in France. Some cities, for instance, decided to build Christmas trees out of steel and glass, big ones in the center of the city that you could use every year. So I don't know, maybe that's a solution. There's the food waste, of course, and that's, I think, a problem for everybody on the planet, because most people might overcook because they want to, I mean, guest people, you know, from their family, and it's a very cheerful moment. It's hard to tell how we can solve this problem. Korea has been actually pretty good on food waste and improved a lot. So maybe there's some lessons that can be taught there. And actually the bigger aspect of end of the year waste is gifts, because it represents more than half of in Europe of the Christmas related you know, pollutions. So the thing, one of the solutions that has been put forward in France this year, for instance, is to promote second-hand gifts and second-hand clothes, for instance, and what could be bought second-hand should be bought second-hand and not especially new, because we also know that after Christmas there's a surge of people reselling their gifts afterwards. So yeah, this has been pushed as a solution, and I think that's quite interesting. If you can buy a second-hand gift that is in you know, good quality, maybe it's a good option.
Right, it might be an option then. Jack, on a personal note, what has been the most tangible change, that is, in the end-of-year celebrations for you as we mark our third Christmas amid this pandemic?
I think it's seeing the smaller family gatherings, this trend all around the world, and we're doing it as well this Christmas. And just perhaps the mood, you know, this year it is a tough one. We have big geopolitical tensions here on the peninsula as well, but the war in Ukraine and the sort of proxy war surrounding that, the huge economic problems and the tightening of belts and all of these issues. But at the heart of it, Christmas remains the same. It has, you know, for religiously Christian, observant Christians, there is midnight mass. And for non-observant, there's bringing the family together, being with family, appreciating what you've got, and trying to assist those who perhaps don't have as much as you have. So being charitable to your fellow people and being close to your families. And it doesn't matter whether the consumer spending's down or this or that or the malls, or what matters is you spend time with your family and you appreciate what you have, and that you try to do something for others as well who aren't quite as lucky. That's the heart of Christmas. That never really changes, and I don't think that's changed personally for myself, and for many people that will remain the same this year.
Right, of course, sharing and caring, of course. Nicolas, I extend the same question to you. What has been the most visible change for you amid our third Christmas, this pandemic, and what's on your wish list, perhaps, Christmas wish list for next year?
So I think there's no big change for me, except maybe the atmosphere is a bit more tense, as Jack mentioned, for various reasons. But I'm celebrating here in Korea, so I'm not with my close ones in France. I think there's various reasons for that, and part of it are also the geopolitical problems. You know, now it takes more hours to come back to France, to Europe in general. It's more expensive. So I guess that's a big change, and probably one of my wishes for next year would be to be able to be back with my close ones for Christmas, and maybe on a more general note, you know, maybe for most like next year wishes. Probably covering more positive stories as a journalist in Korea, because it has been, I think, for all of us, a tough year with a lot of, hard stories to cover. So maybe that would be a good Christmas gift.
Right, and that being said, Jack, what's on your Christmas list?
On my Christmas list, for this year or for next year?
For next year, share them all.
Oh no, for this year it's really just for the cooking to go off. I've been spending the whole morning in the kitchen, and if I don't make that a disaster, I'll be pleased. Everything else will go fine.
Keep my fingers crossed for you.
Yeah, and it's my son's first Christmas this year. He's 8 months old, so you know, it's just about getting him involved and bringing his cousins over, being with the Korean family, and just making sure it all goes well, but no one turns their nose up at all the cooking, because I'm in charge of the main Christmas cooking this year.
I see. Well, happy holidays, Jack. Thank you so much for being here. And Nicolas, as always, thank you very much for your thoughts. Right, well, that is all the time we have for this week's editions of Issues, that is, and Insiders. Have a Merry Christmas. Thank you for watching.